Marcus Webb was having the second worst day of his week, which was really saying something, considering he'd started Monday by crashing his cargo hauler into a space station's loading bay because someone had labeled the docking controls in what he could only assume was alphabetical order, according to a species that didn't have alphabets. Now it was Wednesday, and he was being physically escorted, dragged really, into the Luminous Concordance medical facility by two security guards who looked like they'd been crossed with oversized shrimp and bad attitudes. His head was pounding. His mouth tasted like something had died in it, gotten resurrected, and died again. And according to the very official-looking holographic document one of the shrimp guards kept waving in his face, he was legally required to undergo mandatory psychological evaluation before being allowed back into concordance space. "This is because of the bar fight, isn't it?" Marcus asked, though it came out more like a statement than a question. "It was 3 bar fights," the left guard corrected. "In 2 stations," added the right guard. "Over 4 days," they said in unison, which was creepy. "Okay, but in my defense, the first guy started it, the second guy was asking for it, and the third guy shouldn't have been standing there." The guards exchanged looks that suggested they'd heard better excuses from actual criminals. They deposited Marcus in a waiting room that was aggressively peaceful, soft lighting, calming colors that didn't exist in nature, and music that sounded like someone was gently murdering a harp. He slumped into a chair that immediately adjusted to his body shape, which he found personally invasive. 10 minutes later, a door materialized out of what Marcus had assumed was a wall, and something that looked like a very anxious slug wearing a lab coat oozed into view. "Mr. Webb?" The slug's voice came from somewhere in the middle of its body. "I'm Dr. Venn. I'll be your therapist today." "Lucky you." Dr. Venn's eye stalks, and Marcus was trying very hard not to stare at those, drooped slightly. "Yes, lucky me. If you'll follow me, please, we'll be using the Dream Engine for your evaluation." "The what now?" "The Dream Engine. It's a perfectly safe neural mapping device that allows us to visualize and analyze thought patterns, memories, and psychological structures. It's never failed to provide complete psychological profiles for over 18,000 species." Marcus stood up, wincing as his hangover reminded him that standing was a terrible idea. "And let me guess, I'm the first human you've tried this on?" Dr. Venn's eye stalks did something that might have been the slug equivalent of avoiding eye contact. "You're the 37th, actually. The previous 36 sessions were inconclusive." "Inconclusive?" "They broke the machine." "All of them?" "All of them." Marcus followed Dr. Venn down a corridor that curved in ways that made his headache worse. They entered a room dominated by what looked like a dentist's chair that had been designed by someone who really hated dentists. Above it, a massive apparatus of rings, sensors, and things that definitely shouldn't be pointed at someone's head hung from the ceiling like a mechanical octopus having an existential crisis. A small, bird-like alien with too many feathers in neon colors bounced over to them. "Hi, I'm Chirp. I'll be assisting with your session today. This is so exciting. We've made lots of improvements since the last human session." "What happened in the last human session?" Marcus asked, already regretting the question. "The machine caught fire." "Great. That's great." Dr. Venn gestured to the chair with one of its appendages. "If you could please take a seat, Mr. Webb, we'll begin the neural mapping process. I assure you it's completely painless." Marcus sat down and immediately restraints snapped over his wrists and ankles. "Mostly painless," Dr. Venn corrected. "The restraints are for your safety." "Or yours," Marcus muttered. Chirp began attaching sensors to Marcus's head with the enthusiasm of someone who'd had way too much coffee, and possibly some substances that were illegal in several star systems. The Dream Engine hummed to life, and Marcus felt a strange tingling sensation that started at the base of his skull and spread outward like someone was pouring cold water through his brain. "Now," Dr. Venn said, manipulating a holographic interface that appeared in front of its face equivalent, "I'm going to ask you to relax and let your mind wander. The Dream Engine will do the rest." "Relax?" "Right. I'm strapped to a chair with an angry chandelier about to read my mind. Super relaxing." "Please try, Mr. Webb." Marcus closed his eyes and tried to think about nothing, which immediately made him think about everything, which was apparently exactly what the dream engine wanted, because the humming intensified and the temperature in the room dropped by several degrees. Then something made a sound that machinery should never make. It sounded like screaming. The dream engine didn't just malfunction. It had what could only be described as a mechanical nervous breakdown. Lights flashed in colors that Marcus was pretty sure weren't visible to human eyes, but he could see them anyway, which seemed wrong. The holographic display in front of Dr. Venn exploded into a mess of data streams, neural pathways, and what looked like error messages in 6 different languages, none of which were saying anything positive. Chirp said, which was probably the most understated response to chaos Marcus had ever heard. That's not normal. What's not normal? Marcus asked, trying not to move his head too much because the sensors were getting uncomfortably warm. Dr. Venn's eye stalks were moving independently, each focused on different parts of the data stream. Your neural patterns are... I don't even know what they're doing. Chirp, are we reading this correctly? Chirp hopped closer to the display, head tilting at an angle that would have broken a human neck. The system says it's detecting 17,000 simultaneous active memory threads. 17,000? And counting. Wait, now it's 23,000. Mr. Webb, are you doing something? I'm sitting here, Marcus protested. I'm literally just sitting here. The dream engine made another unhappy sound, and smoke started rising from one of the interface panels. Dr. Venn oozed over to it with surprising speed and slapped something that might have been a reset button. Nothing happened. Okay, Dr. Venn said in the tone of someone whose day was going exactly as poorly as they'd predicted. Chirp, run a diagnostic. Something's interfering with the neural mapping. Already running it. The diagnostic says the machine is fine. The machine is smoking. The diagnostic says the machine is fine and also that we should evacuate the building, but mostly that it's fine. Marcus watched as more screens appeared around the room, each showing different aspects of whatever the dream engine was seeing inside his head. None of it made sense. There were images of battles he'd never fought, tactical maps of places he'd never been, and what looked like a complete schematic of 17 different ways to escape from this exact room using only the equipment currently present. Why am I seeing World War II? Dr. Venn asked, pointing at one screen. I don't know, I wasn't there, Marcus said. Why are you seeing World War II is the better question, Chirp added. Another screen showed the Napoleonic Wars. Another showed what looked like a space battle from a video game Marcus had played when he was 15. A fourth screen was displaying the entire text of a military strategy book he'd read on a long-haul flight 3 years ago. Oh, Marcus said. Oh, that's what it's seeing. What? Dr. Venn and Chirp said simultaneously. All of it. It's seeing all of it at once. Dr. Venn's eye stalks converged on Marcus like a pair of confused periscopes. All of what, Mr. Webb? Everything I've ever read, watched, played, or thought about regarding tactics, strategy, or conflict resolution. My brain kind of files it all under general reference material. There was a long silence broken only by the continued sound of the dream engine having a crisis. General reference material? Dr. Venn repeated slowly. Yeah, you know, in case it's useful later. You've memorized thousands of historical battles, fictional conflicts, and strategic scenarios as reference material? I mean, not memorized exactly. It's more like my brain indexed it all and can pull it up when needed. Doesn't everyone do that? No, Chirp said. No, Dr. Venn agreed. Literally no other species does that, Chirp continued. Huh, Marcus said. Weird. The dream engine chose that moment to escalate its breakdown. The main ring around Marcus's head started spinning faster, and the holographic displays multiplied until the entire room was filled with overlapping images of warfare strategy and what Marcus recognized as a fairly detailed analysis of the structural weak points in this facility's architecture. Did your brain just map out how to break out of this building? Dr. Venn asked, staring at one particular screen. Probably. I wasn't actively thinking about it. You weren't actively. Chirp, shut it down. I'm trying. It won't shut down. It's trying to process all the data and it just keeps finding more. Marcus felt the tingling sensation in his head intensify. Is it supposed to feel like someone's pouring carbonated lightning through my skull? No. Just checking. The dream engine made one final, desperate sound, like a computer trying to divide by zero, and then every screen went black. The lights in the room flickered. Somewhere in the building, an alarm started wailing. Then everything came back online at once, and the dream engine displayed a single message in letters big enough to read from space. Neural architecture incompatible with standard analysis protocols. And below that, in slightly smaller text, what the hell is wrong with this species? Did the machine just editorialize? Marcus asked. Dr. Venn slumped against the nearest wall, which rippled slightly under the slug's weight. I need to file a report. I need to file so many reports. Chirp. Document everything. Already on it. And someone get Mr. Webb some water. He's going to be here a while. I'd really rather not be, Marcus said. Too bad. Your brain just crashed a machine that successfully mapped the psychology of beings made of pure energy. We're not letting you leave until we figure out what's happening in there. Marcus sighed. This was definitely moving into first place for worst day of the week, and it was only Wednesday. An hour later, Marcus was still strapped to the chair. But now he had water, a sandwich that tasted like cardboard dipped in regret, and an audience. 3 more technicians had joined Dr. Venn and Chirp, all of them staring at the displays like they were trying to read tea leaves written in calculus. All right, Dr. Venn said. Eye stalks focused on Marcus with what might have been determination or possibly just stress. We're going to try something different. Instead of mapping your entire neural structure, we're going to isolate a single memory. Something simple. What did you do this morning? Woke up hungover, got arrested by your shrimp cops, and got dragged here. Before that, what's the last normal thing you remember doing? Marcus thought about it. I stopped at a cafe on Station 17 to get coffee before my flight. Perfect. That's perfect. A simple, mundane activity. Chirp, isolate the memory thread for that event. Chirp's feathers ruffled as they worked the controls. Got it. Pulling up the cafe memory now. The main display flickered and resolved into a first-person view of a small cafe. Marcus could see himself entering, approaching the counter, ordering coffee. So far, so normal. Then the display split into 17 different windows. Each window showed the same cafe from a different angle, as if Marcus's brain had been simultaneously viewing the scene from every possible vantage point. In one window, he was tracking the exits. In another, he'd automatically cataloged every person in the room by potential threat level. A third window showed a complete inventory of improvised weapons within reach, including a coffee mug rated at medium effectiveness and a sugar dispenser rated at low effectiveness but high distraction value. Why are you doing a threat assessment of a coffee shop? One of the technicians asked, their translated voice coming out high and confused. I'm not doing anything, Marcus said. That's just happening in the background. The background of what? My brain, I guess? Dr. Venn manipulated the interface, zooming in on one of the analysis windows. Mr. Webb, your subconscious mind cataloged 17 escape routes from that cafe, assigned tactical values to 14 civilians, and calculated the structural integrity of the front window, while you were ordering coffee. Yeah, that sounds about right. This isn't normal. It's not? No. When a Calarian enters a cafe, they think about what to drink. When a Vexian enters a cafe, they think about the social dynamics of the space. When a human enters a cafe, apparently they plan for a military extraction. Well, I mean, you never know, Marcus said reasonably. Chirp made a sound like a kettle whistling. Oh no, doctor, look at this. A new window had opened, and it wasn't showing the cafe anymore. It was showing a tactical map of a battle that had happened on Earth in 1944, cross-referenced with the cafe's layout, with annotations about how similar urban warfare strategies could be applied to the cafe's floor plan if necessary. Why is your brain doing this? Dr. Venn asked, and Marcus detected a note of actual despair in the slug's voice. I read a lot of history books. You read a history book and your brain automatically cross-referenced it with every physical space you've encountered since then? I mean, when you say it like that, it sounds weird. More windows opened. Marcus's brain, apparently deciding that since they were already looking, it might as well show off, began pulling up similar analyses from every cafe, bar, spaceport, and corridor Marcus had visited in the last 5 years. Each one had been automatically processed, cataloged, and filed away under what his subconscious had apparently labeled as tactical reference data. One of the technicians, a crystalline being whose name Marcus hadn't caught, spoke up. "Doctor, I'm seeing something else. Look at the metadata attached to these memories." Dr. Venn zoomed out, and suddenly the displays were showing not just what Marcus remembered, but how his brain had stored it. Instead of linear memory chains like every other species, Marcus's mind had created a web. Every memory was connected to dozens of others through links labeled things like similar tactical environment, comparable threat dynamics, and potentially useful precedent. "Your brain is running constant wargame simulations," Dr. Venn said slowly, as if saying it slowly would make it make sense. "Every experience you have gets automatically fed into some kind of tactical analysis engine, cross-referenced with military history, strategy games, and fictional conflicts, and stored as potential contingency data." "Okay, but again, you never know when that might be useful. When would tactical data from a video game about space elves be useful in a coffee shop?" "Space elves have excellent flanking strategies," Marcus said defensively. The dream engine, which had been relatively quiet during this exchange, suddenly made a sound like a wheeze. More error messages appeared. "Warning, recursive analysis detected." The machine had found something new, and it didn't like it. "What now?" Dr. Venn asked the universe at large. Chirp leaned closer to the display. "It's found a loop. When you analyze things tactically, your brain stores that analysis, but then it also analyzes the act of analyzing things, stores that as tactical data, and then analyzes the storage process itself." "My brain is analyzing its own analysis?" "Recursively. Your brain has turned itself into a self-improving tactical prediction engine that never turns off. Doctor, the machine estimates he's running approximately 9 million background calculations at any given moment." 9 million? And most of them are about warfare, strategy, or survival scenarios that have never happened and probably never will. There was a long silence. "So," Marcus said eventually, "am I crazy, or is this normal?" Dr. Venn's eye stalks drooped until they were nearly touching the floor. "I don't know anymore, Mr. Webb, I genuinely don't know. But we're going to need to escalate this. Chirp, contact the Medical Ethics Board. Tell them we have a situation." "What kind of situation?" "The kind where we need to decide if humanity is psychologically safe for civilized space." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in the chair. "That seems a bit extreme. Your brain has been preparing for wars that don't exist since before you could walk. The Dream Engine estimates that you've mentally fought and won approximately 40,000 battles that never happened. I'm not sure extreme begins to cover it." The sandwich Marcus had eaten earlier suddenly felt like a bad decision. "For the record, I've never actually started a fight that wasn't already happening. That's not as reassuring as you think it is." The Dream Engine beeped helpfully, and a new message appeared. "Analysis incomplete. Estimated time to full neural mapping, 7,000 years." "Great," Dr. Venn muttered. "Just great." Marcus had been moved to what Dr. Venn called an observation room, and what Marcus called a very comfortable prison. He had a couch, a bathroom, snacks that still tasted vaguely like disappointment, and a window that showed a view of the medical facility's garden, which was full of plants that definitely shouldn't be able to coexist but somehow did. He'd been there for 3 hours. Through the wall, which was apparently not as soundproof as the designers had hoped, Marcus could hear the emergency symposium that Dr. Venn had convened. Voices in various tones, pitches, and languages filtered through, all of them discussing him like he was a particularly concerning lab result. "The fundamental question," a slow, grave voice said. Ambassador Kelp, Marcus assumed, based on how long it took to finish each sentence, "is whether this represents an aberration in the human species or a universal trait of their psychology." "The data suggests it's universal," Dr. Venn replied. "We've tested 37 humans. All of them showed similar patterns to varying degrees. Mr. Webb just happens to be an extreme example. Extreme is putting it mildly, another voice chimed in. His brain is essentially running a military simulation engine 24 hours a day. That's not psychology. That's weaponized paranoia. Marcus considered objecting to that characterization, but he had to admit it wasn't entirely inaccurate. Perhaps, a gentler voice suggested. Chirp, Marcus thought. We should consider that this is an adaptive trait. Humans evolved on a death world. Earth has more apex predators per square kilometer than any other known inhabited planet. Maybe this is just their survival mechanism. A survival mechanism that never turns off? Well, they did survive. There was a murmur of agreement, followed by Ambassador Kelp's voice again. Nevertheless, we must consider the implications. A species that is constantly unconsciously preparing for warfare is a species that may be predisposed to creating conflict. Marcus pressed his face against the wall, knowing they couldn't hear him but unable to stop himself. That's not how it works. Apparently the wall was less soundproof than he'd thought because the symposium went silent. Then Dr. Ven's voice. Mr. Webb, are you listening to this? Your walls are terrible. Can you hear everything we're saying? Unfortunately. There was a brief, whispered conference, and then Ambassador Kelp spoke directly to the wall. Mr. Webb, perhaps you'd like to contribute to this discussion. I'd love to, actually, since you're apparently deciding whether my entire species is too crazy for civilized space. We're not, Dr. Ven sounded flustered. We're simply trying to understand. Then let me explain something, Marcus said, still talking to the wall. Yes, my brain does tactical analysis in the background. Yes, I can't turn it off. But that doesn't mean I'm dangerous. It means I'm prepared. Prepared for what? Ambassador Kelp asked. For anything. For the thing I don't see coming. Every human does this because we evolved in an environment where the thing that killed you was usually the thing you didn't think about. So we think about everything. But you're not on Earth anymore, another voice pointed out. You're in civilized space. There are no apex predators here. Are you sure about that? Marcus asked. Because I've been to 17 different stations in concordant space and I've seen bar fights, pirate raids, equipment failures, and one station decompression. Civilized space is still space, and space is still trying to kill you. My brain knows that. There was a longer silence this time. He has a point, Chirp said quietly. Does he? Ambassador Kelp asked. Or is he justifying a psychological predisposition toward violence? With all due respect, Marcus said, putting no respect in his voice whatsoever. I've been hauling cargo through your space for 5 years. I've never started a fight. I've finished a few, sure, but I've never thrown the first punch. The tactical analysis in my head doesn't make me violent. It makes me aware. Aware of what? Aware of exits. Aware of threats. Aware of when situations are about to go bad so I can get out before they do. Most of the time anyway. Sometimes I'm hungover and miss the signs, which is how we got here in the first place. Dr. Ven's voice came through the wall, thoughtful. So the analysis is primarily defensive? Of course it's defensive. Do you think I want to fight? Fighting hurts. I've got scars from bar fights, and none of them were fun to get. The tactical analysis is so I can avoid fighting, not seek it out. But you have fought, Ambassador Kelp pointed out, because sometimes avoiding a fight isn't an option. Sometimes some drunk Vexian decides you looked at him wrong and you can either defend yourself or get your face rearranged. The fact that my brain has already calculated which barstool makes the best improvised shield doesn't make me the bad guy. Marcus heard what sounded like Dr. Ven manipulating controls. Chirp, pull up Webb's memory files again. Look specifically at the incidents that led to him being here. There was a pause, then Chirp's voice. Pulling them up now. Oh, that's interesting. What? In all 3 altercations, the tactical analysis in his background processing marked the initial aggressors as threats approximately 4 seconds before they became violent. His conscious mind didn't register it, but his subconscious flagged the danger. What are you saying? I'm saying his brain was trying to warn him. The tactical analysis wasn't promoting violence. It was trying to prevent it. He just didn't listen to the warnings. Because I was drunk, Marcus added helpfully through the wall. So the hypervigilance is a warning system? Another voice asked. Not just a warning system, Dr. Venn said slowly. It's a survival system. His brain is running constant threat assessments and escape scenario planning. Not because it wants conflict, but because it wants to avoid it. The fact that it stores military history and tactical data is just using available information to improve the warning system. That's actually quite logical, Ambassador Kelp admitted. It's exhausting is what it is, Marcus muttered. We heard that, Chirp said. Good. Because I want you all to know that while you're in there debating whether humans are too dangerous for space, my brain is currently analyzing the structural integrity of this couch, calculating how many calories are in these terrible snacks, and modeling 17 different scenarios for how this conversation could go. I'm not doing it on purpose. I can't turn it off. But I'm not dangerous because of it, I'm just tired. There was another long silence, and then Ambassador Kelp spoke. Dr. Venn, show me the rest of the data. I want to see what else the Dream Engine found. Marcus heard the sound of data files being opened, screens being activated. Through the wall, he could hear the various symposium members reacting to whatever they were seeing. These threat assessments, Ambassador Kelp said slowly, they're not random. There's a pattern. What kind of pattern? Someone asked. The highest threat priorities in his unconscious analysis are consistently situations where others could be harmed. Look here, this memory of a near hull breach on Station 9. His immediate unconscious response was to calculate evacuation routes for everyone in the sector, not just himself. That could still be self-preservation, another voice argued, saving others to save himself. Then explain this, Dr. Venn said, and Marcus heard the sound of another file opening. This is from 2 years ago, a fire on a cargo hauler. Webb wasn't even on the ship. He was docked next to it. Look at what his brain did. There was a pause. He immediately started calculating rescue options, Chirp said quietly. His brain mapped the burning ship's layout, cross-referenced it with fire suppression strategies from 18 different historical incidents, and formulated 3 extraction plans before his conscious mind had even registered what was happening. Did he act on any of these plans? Ambassador Kelp asked. Yes, Dr. Venn said. He pulled 6 crew members out of that fire. The Concordance gave him a commendation for it. He never mentioned it in his intake interview. Marcus shifted uncomfortably on the couch. He'd hoped that particular incident wouldn't come up. So the tactical analysis serves a protective function, Ambassador Kelp said. It's not just self-preservation, it's group preservation. It's more than that, Dr. Venn said, and Marcus heard something in the slug's voice that might have been awe or possibly fear. Look at the deeper pattern in his memory structure. The tactical analysis only fully activates in situations where he perceives threats to things he cares about, people he knows, places he considers safe, principles he values. The rest of the time it's running at a lower level, just monitoring. So it's not constant warfare simulation, Chirp said. It's constant protective simulation. Which brings us, Ambassador Kelp said, and Marcus heard the ambassador move closer to the wall, to the unthinkable question. Which is, Dr. Venn asked, what happens if humanity ever faces a real existential threat? Not a bar fight or a cargo incident, but a genuine threat to their species or the species they've allied with? The silence that followed was heavy enough to have mass. Based on this data, Dr. Venn said quietly, they would be absolutely terrifying. Elaborate. Every human carries this unconscious tactical engine. Every single one of them is constantly, automatically learning from conflicts they've never fought, storing strategies from wars that never happened, and cross-referencing survival scenarios against every situation they encounter. If you threatened something they cared about, really threatened it, and they all activated that same protective response that Webb showed during the fire, they would coordinate, Chirp said, realization dawning in their voice. They would share strategies. They would adapt in real time. They would turn into a collective defensive system that's been training unconsciously for their entire lives. That's speculation, someone objected. Is it? Dr. Venn asked. Think about human history. They've had two major planetary wars. Both times they unified against existential threats. Both times they won through tactics, strategy, and an apparently limitless capacity to learn from failure. They didn't win because they were stronger than their enemies. They won because they were better at organized violence. That's horrifying, Ambassador Kelp said. Is it? Marcus asked through the wall, unable to stay quiet anymore. Or is it just practical? Mr. Webb. No, seriously. You're all in there talking about how terrifying humans would be in a real war, but you're missing the point. We don't want to fight a war. Everything my brain does, everything you're seeing in that data, it's all about avoiding conflict or ending it as quickly as possible. We're not warlike, we're war-ready. There's a difference. Is there? Ambassador Kelp asked. Yes. A warlike species seeks out conflict. We avoid it. But if something threatens our home, our friends, our allies, then yeah, we fight. And we fight smart because we've been preparing for it without even realizing it. But that preparation isn't because we love violence. It's because we love what we're protecting. Marcus heard the sound of more files being accessed. Doctor, Chirp said, voice trembling slightly, there's another layer to the data. Under all the tactical analysis, under all the threat assessment and strategy compilation, there's something else. What? Hope. His brain stores all this information about warfare and conflict, but the underlying pattern, the thing that connects all of it, is an assumption that things will work out, that survival is possible, that protection is achievable. He's not planning for defeat. He's planning for victory even when the odds are terrible. That's not logical, someone said. No, Dr. Venn agreed. It's not. It's irrational, stubborn, and completely illogical. But it's there. Under all the tactical analysis, under all the threat assessment, there's this bedrock assumption that if they fight hard enough, smart enough, and together enough, they'll win. That's insane, Ambassador Kelp said. That's human, Marcus corrected. There was another long silence, and then Ambassador Kelp spoke. Dr. Venn, based on everything we've learned today, what is your professional assessment of Mr. Webb's psychological state? Marcus held his breath. Honestly, Dr. Venn said, I think he's the sanest person I've ever met. He's aware of threats, prepared for contingencies, and despite carrying around what amounts to a military computer in his unconscious mind, he chooses not to use it unless absolutely necessary. He's not dangerous. He's just very, very human. And the species as a whole? Enthusiastically overprepared for violence, but generally benign. They'll plan for wars they hope never to fight and protect people they barely know. They're exhausting, paranoid, and somehow still optimistic. I don't know whether to be impressed or concerned. Why not both? Chirp suggested. Marcus smiled despite himself. Very well, Ambassador Kelp said. Then I motion that we certify Mr. Webb as psychologically sound and clear him for continued travel in concordant space, with the notation that all humans should be considered protective allies, but should not be given large quantities of alcohol before entering social situations. Seconded, Dr. Venn said, and Marcus could hear the relief in the slug's voice. Motion passed. Someone please inform Mr. Webb that he's free to go. Marcus was already standing up. Dr. Venn met Marcus at the door to the observation room, holding a datapad and looking significantly more tired than when the day had started. Congratulations, Mr. Webb. You've been officially certified as mentally sound by the Concordance Medical Ethics Board. Does the certification mention that you think my entire species is insane? It says you're enthusiastically overprepared for violence but generally benign. I'll take it. Marcus accepted the datapad, which displayed his official clearance to travel in concordant space along with several addendums that basically amounted to, please don't break anything else. For what it's worth, Dr. Venn said, eye stalks drooping with exhaustion. You're the strangest species I've ever encountered. Stranger than the beings made of pure energy you mentioned? They're incomprehensible, which makes them less strange than something I can almost understand, but not quite. Humans are right on the edge of making sense, and that's somehow more disturbing. Glad we could expand your horizons, Marcus said dryly. Chirp appeared around the corner, feathers still vibrating with residual excitement. Mr. Webb, before you go, can I ask you something? Sure. If something really bad happened, like really bad existential threat to the concordance level bad, would humans actually help us? Or would you protect your own species first? Marcus considered the question. Behind him, he knew his brain was already running scenarios, calculating odds, assessing threat levels for hypothetical dangers that didn't exist yet. It was exhausting, it was constant, but it was also useful. Probably, yeah, he said finally. Probably? Yeah, probably. That's not very reassuring. It's honest. I don't know what humans would do in a hypothetical situation, but based on history, based on the fact that we keep pulling strangers out of burning buildings and diving into hull breaches to save people we don't know, yeah, we'd probably help. Not because it's smart or because it benefits us, but because it's the right thing to do. And humans have this really inconvenient habit of doing the right thing even when it's stupid. Chirp's feathers settled slightly. That's actually kind of nice. Don't tell anyone. We have a reputation to maintain. Dr. Venn handed Marcus another data pad, this one containing what looked like a very lengthy report. This is your psychological evaluation. I'd recommend not reading it. It contains phrases like weaponized pattern recognition and voluntary hypervigilance syndrome that will probably just annoy you. Weaponized pattern recognition? Marcus repeated. That's what you're calling it? Would you prefer tactical paranoia optimization? I would prefer you call it paying attention, but I guess that's not scientific enough. Mr. Webb, your brain catalogs the load-bearing capacity of furniture in case you need to use it as a barricade. That goes somewhat beyond paying attention. You say that now, but wait until you need a barricade. Dr. Venn's eye stalks did something complicated that might have been the slug equivalent of a headshake. You're impossible. I've been called worse. Marcus tucked both data pads under his arm and headed for the exit. The facility's corridors seemed less threatening now, though his brain was still helpfully noting that the decorative plants in the hallway could be used as improvised camouflage, and the reflective floor tiles would make stealth approaches difficult for potential threats. He was almost to the main entrance when Ambassador Kelp appeared, moving with the kind of slow deliberation that suggested each movement was being carefully considered. The slug-like being was even larger in person, and Marcus's tactical analysis immediately flagged it as low mobility, high diplomatic value, protective threatened. He told his brain to shut up. It didn't listen. Mr. Webb, Ambassador Kelp said, voice carrying the weight of ages. A moment of your time. Marcus stopped. Ambassador, I wanted to speak with you personally before you departed. The symposium today was quite educational. Glad I could be your lab rat. That's not what I meant. Kelp shifted and Marcus noticed that the ambassador's body language, or whatever passed for body language in a species that was mostly one large body, seemed almost uncertain. I wanted to apologize. That caught Marcus off guard. For what? For assuming the worst about your species, for treating your psychological profile as a threat rather than trying to understand it first. We pride ourselves on being enlightened, peaceful, advanced. But today we nearly condemned an entire species because they think differently than we do. To be fair, we do think pretty differently. Yes, but that's not inherently wrong. We've spent so long in peace that we've forgotten what it takes to maintain peace. Your species hasn't forgotten. You prepare for violence so you can prevent it. You study war so you can avoid it. That's not madness. That's wisdom we've lost. Marcus shifted his weight, uncomfortable with the sudden seriousness. I just haul cargo, Ambassador. I'm not that deep. Perhaps. Or perhaps you're exactly as deep as you need to be, and no more. That's its own form of wisdom. Kelp moved slightly closer. Tell me honestly, Mr. Webb, if the Concordance faced a threat we couldn't handle, would humanity really stand with us? Marcus thought about it. He thought about the Dream Engine's findings, about the protective instincts buried in human psychology, about the fact that humans kept running into burning buildings even when it wasn't their job. He thought about the bar fights he'd finished, and the fires he'd fought and the strangers he'd helped without thinking about it. Here's the thing, Ambassador. You're asking the wrong question. It's not would we stand with you. It's could you stop us from standing with you? Because humans have this really stupid tendency to adopt people. You give us an ally and suddenly they're family. You give us a cause, and suddenly it's our cause. You probably don't want that, honestly. We're loud, we're violent when cornered, and we'll absolutely make it everyone else's problem. That sounds exactly like what we'd want in an ally. Does it? Because we're also the species that broke your dream engine 37 times and counting. We're the species that turns coffee shops into tactical scenarios and can't look at a room without calculating its defensive value. You sure you want that level of chaos in your life? Kelp's body rippled in what might have been laughter. Mr. Webb, we've had peace for 300 years. Perhaps a little chaos is overdue. Marcus couldn't argue with that. He nodded to the ambassador and continued toward the exit, where his ship was waiting in the docking bay. Behind him, he heard Kelp speaking quietly to someone, probably updating the Concordance database with new information about humans. He hoped they spelled enthusiastically overprepared for violence correctly. That was going on his resume. The docking bay was busy with the usual traffic, cargo haulers, passenger shuttles, and one very expensive-looking diplomatic vessel that Marcus's brain immediately assessed as having excellent armor plating but vulnerable maneuvering thrusters. He ignored that assessment and headed for his own ship, the reasonable excuse, which was neither reasonable nor an excuse for anything, but which hauled cargo reliably, and had only tried to kill him twice. Chirp was waiting by the loading ramp, practically vibrating with energy. I didn't think I'd see you again, Marcus said. I wanted to give you something. Chirp held out a small data chip. It's a copy of your neural mapping. Well, the parts we managed to map before the system crashed. I thought you might want it. Marcus took the chip, turning it over in his hand. Why would I want a record of my brain being weird? Because it's not weird, Mr. Webb. It's amazing. Your mind does in the background what takes our most advanced computers hours of processing. You've turned pattern recognition into an art form. And under all of that tactical analysis, all that threat assessment, all those war games you're constantly running, there's hope, there's protection, there's care. That's not something to be ashamed of. You got all that from a neural scan? I got all that from watching you today. You could have been angry about being forced into evaluation. You could have been hostile to us for treating you like a threat. But you weren't. You were patient, you explained things, and you helped us understand. That's not the behavior of someone dangerous, that's the behavior of someone kind. Marcus felt his face heat up, which was embarrassing. I was just trying to get out of there. Sure you were. Chirp's feathers ruffled in what might have been a smile. Take care of yourself, Mr. Webb, and if you ever need therapy again, please don't break any more machines. No promises. Chirp bounced away and Marcus climbed into his ship. The reasonable excuse greeted him with a series of system status updates, most of which were concerning but none of which were immediately fatal. He ran through his pre-flight checklist, his hands moving through familiar motions while his brain unhelpfully provided 17 different emergency scenarios and how to handle each one. He was halfway through the power-up sequence when his comm system chirped. Dr. Ven's voice came through, slightly distorted by static. Mr. Webb, one more thing before you go. What now? Did I forget to sign something? No, I just wanted to update your file. I'm adding a note to your psychological evaluation. What kind of note? There was a pause, and Marcus could almost hear Dr. Ven choosing words carefully. Do not provoke, but also, maybe keep on our side. Marcus smiled despite himself. I'll take that as a compliment. It is one. Safe travels, Mr. Webb. The comm clicked off and Marcus finished his pre-flight sequence. The reasonable excuse lifted off smoothly, or as smoothly as anything that old, and temperamental could lift off, and within minutes he was clear of the station and plotting a course to his next delivery. Behind him, the luminous Concordance medical facility grew smaller in his view screen. Inside, he knew, they were probably already trying to fix the dream engine, so they could test the next human who wandered into their space. He felt a little sorry for whoever that turned out to be, but only a little. As he engaged the FTL drive and the stars stretched into lines around him, Marcus leaned back in his pilot's chair and let himself relax. His brain, predictably, didn't relax at all. It was already analyzing the jump coordinates, calculating arrival times, assessing potential hazards, and running background simulations of 17 different cargo handling scenarios. He'd spent his entire life with this constant tactical chatter in his head, and today was the first time anyone had tried to explain to him what it was: weaponized pattern recognition, voluntary hypervigilance syndrome, enthusiastically overprepared for violence but generally benign. They'd made it sound so complicated. But really, it was simple. His brain just wanted to keep him safe. Wanted to keep everyone safe. And if that meant cataloging threats that didn't exist and planning for wars that would never happen, and running endless simulations of disasters that would probably never come. Well, probably was a dangerous word in space, and Marcus had learned a long time ago that it was better to be overprepared than underprepared, better to be hypervigilant than caught off guard, better to know 17 escape routes than to need one and not have it. That wasn't crazy. That was just being human. The stars streamed past, and somewhere in the back of his mind, his brain started running tactical analyses of the next station he'd be visiting. He let it. After all, you never knew when you might need to know the structural weak points of a loading dock or the optimal defensive positions in a cargo bay. And if that made him strange to the peaceful species of the Concordance, well, he'd been called worse. He'd been called a threat, a psychological anomaly, a walking military computer that never shut off. But he'd also been called brave, helpful, and kind. And somewhere in that dream engine data, buried under all the tactical analysis and threat assessments and wargame simulations, there was hope. There was protection. There was the stubborn, irrational belief that things would work out if you just fought hard enough and cared enough and refused to give up. That was worth being strange for. That was worth being human for. Marcus smiled, engaged the autopilot, and settled in for the long haul to Station 23. His brain helpfully provided him with 17 different scenarios that could go wrong during the flight, 15 ways to handle each scenario, and a complete tactical assessment of Station 23's layout based on publicly available schematics. He ignored most of it, but he kept the escape routes, just in case.